Oi, oi.
Oh yeah, this is a
Oi.
different setup, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
This is a
Not like
change in proceedings. So straight off the bat, I'm literally just going to throw it out there. So everyone that joins in on a Thursday night is used to the Killer Comic Show, comic reviews, what's coming up, killer covers and stuff like that. Obviously, with the highly anticipated, and it's finally here with the show, The Last of Us finally starting. There's going to be a change in proceedings every week. So on Tuesdays, no, on Wednesdays, Sean, isn't it? On Wednesdays, we're going to have the Last of Us episode review every single week until the season ends. Then on the Thursday, we will have the Killer Comic Show, which is just standard. Me, Tom, and Andy talking about comics for your visual and audio pleasure. Then on a Monday, we will have the top 10 killer comics coming out that week. And then it will go on and on and on. So we have 3 shows every single week on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Thursday. If that isn't what you wanted in 2023, I don't know what the fuck is, mate. I really don't.
well, that's I'll maybe get to watch one. I'll probably the one I'm on.
That's the
So
one. But I mean, thank you for joining, mate. So obviously we've got massive fans of the Last of Us computer game TV show. Tom is away on holiday, but he's played the computer game and he's watched the TV show as well. Andy is still off. So it's down to me and you to give this show a decent review from what it deserves.
yeah, we'll certainly do our best anyway.
So obviously, if we just jump straight in, so it is The Last of Us. It's finally here. The computer game started in 2013. 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Did you obviously played the game, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't play it in 2013. I played it when it was on the PS4, so I didn't play it on the PS3. I'd heard of it, but at that point I was on the Xbox 360, so I hadn't. But then the PS4 came out, and then they had a version of this on. Then they done an updated version,
Yeah.
so I got the updated version of that, and now they've got another PS5 version of it, which is roughly what we've got now. But it's for me, it's a game that I keep going back to. It's a game like no other, truth be told. I think the closest game to it would be maybe Red Dead 2, in terms
Yeah.
of story. When it first announced about the TV show, my thoughts were, do we need a TV show? Because the story in the game is so
Yeah.
compelling, it's so good. Does it need a TV show? But, they brought the TV show out, and I wasn't disappointed, truth be told.
Here we are. So, I mean, obviously, if you've been living under a rock for the past 10 years and you've never heard of Naughty Dog or you don't know what The Last of Us is, we'll kind of give a brief synopsis of it, of what the computer games is, and then going into the TV show. So, what is The Last of Us? So, basically, The Last of Us is a 2013 action adventure created by the fantastic creative team for PlayStation. For all other media content is obviously Naughty Dog, and the computer game itself was it was published by Sony Computer Entertainment. So you've got 2 massive galactics of the computer genre world, and they just come together and they've created this fantastic game. Now, as you spoke about, this is the remastered version. So obviously the graphics have been elevated. The gameplay's a lot smoother. But I mean, do you want to talk about the premise of this game? Because this was kind of a new genre for PlayStation 4. This was obviously, we've had third-person shoot 'em ups before, but this kind of really encapsulated the gameplay of the characters and really drew you into the whole thought process of the character building and the gameplay and kind of what the end story is about this.
Yeah, for me, I think it was the first third-person game I played on the PlayStation. The first third-person game I'd ever played was Gears of War. So this has got some similarities where you're able to hide in behind certain walls or cars or whatever it might be for cover and all the rest of it. But the way that it's done, it's just so expansive. It's so open. It's a phenomenal game to play, just to sit down, and it's easy to play as well. It's not complicated, so you don't have to be a seasoned gamer to play this. Unlike if you're going to like a Souls game or some other types of games that you'd need to have played before. This, not really.
No, I mean, this obviously, it tells the story of a post-apocalyptic meltdown of the world as it is, and we've got the two main characters as shown on the computer game cover here is obviously Ellie, and we've got Joel. So it kind of all transcends from there. Obviously, there's a virus that's killed everyone off, and we are left with the antagonist, which is Ellie, and Joel, the sole survivor from his family pot, and they kind of come together. I mean, they're kind of thrust and thrown together without even having a chance to deny or accept the responsibilities that they got. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
100%. I think the interesting take on this is it's a zombie game, but it's not zombies.
mhm. Yeah.
It's, it tells you when you're in the TV show at the beginning, it sort of explains what to expect, where it doesn't do that in the game.
Mhm.
And I think it's actually quite a unique twist to the zombie genre. Will refer back to the zombie genre because
Yeah.
there are elements of that, but then again, there's additional elements to it, which which I think it's what makes it so compelling to watch
Yeah.
and play.
Yeah.
It's the first game of its type for me that
Mhm.
the story actually took over the gameplay. To
Yeah,
be honest with
yeah,
you,
yeah, yeah. And I mean, this game for me is one of the, if not the greatest game of all time, in my opinion. As you mentioned, it's a game that you keep going back to. You
yeah,
keep going back to it. You could go back to it 2 or 3 years, and even though you know the ending of it, you still engaged in it and you still want to play. I mean, it sold 1.3 million units in its first week, and over 17 million by April 2018. So 5 years after the release, it sold 17 million copies of the game. I think that's
unreal.
that's unheard of. That's amazing.
It's and it don't bear in mind that's more than 4 years ago. So it's only going to increase again because you've
Mhm,
got people that maybe went from Xbox and bought a PS5 and have
mhm.
now getting this as well. So it's it is phenomenal. And you consider how much it costs per game.
Yeah.
So the amount of money that they've made off this one
Mhm.
property is
Yeah.
phenomenal.
And I mean, we've got people in the chat. We've got Leon, Connie, and we've got Batdan Dixon and Triple G. So massive. First of all, massive shout out to James T Keegan who done his review show last night. I watched that. James T. Keegan is the man. He's the Last of Us man. He knows the ins and outs of every single character. So massive shout out to him. I'm looking forward to watching this show on a Wednesday, and so that's going to be interesting. That's going to be interesting to do. But a lot of people in the chat are saying. I mean, Leon, for instance, he says, "I'm not a gamer, but I watched the first episode of the series and it was pretty damn good." And also, Batdan Dixon has also said, "Not played the game and halfway through episode 1 on TV. Hopefully, no spoilers tonight." We'll try not to do as many spoilers. If we do, I'll put the spoiler warning on the TV screen. You can kind of mute us, or you can come back and watch a review after you've watched it.
Yeah, I think there's going to be one where we can't really get away from it because
Mhm.
it's such an integral part of that episode. But
Yeah.
we've got the spoiler alert, so
But going back to the comment, I think what Leon said, he's not a gamer. But as you mentioned, I think with a lot of people jumping on the reverse end of this, like watching a TV show first and then potentially picking it up in playing on the game, again, the sales are going to go through the roof because they're going to be like, it's like the reversed effect. People are going to watch it and think, oh, I want to find out more about this because there are some things in the game that we haven't. I mean, it's only episode 1, but it leaves you salivating, wanting more that we haven't seen in the TV show yet. And there's potentially going to be things in the TV show that
mhm.
weren't in the game because it's not made. It's made differently. It would fit the gaming industry better than it would fit the TV and vice versa. But I
Yeah,
mean, straight off the bat, this game was sensational. Like it won every single award there was. Game of the Year awards from several gaming publications, critics, and game award ceremonies. It's been cited as one of the greatest games ever made. And I would 100% say it would be. I mean, because when you jump into it, when it's third person, I mean, look at the graphics. The graphics straight off the bat are just.
oh, they're incredible. It's not just the character graphics; it's the landscape and everything else around it. See when they're out in the open and they're in the forests and there's deers
Mhm,
running past and things like that. Sometimes you actually just stop and just
mhm,
sort of look about just to
yeah.
take it all in.
Mhm.
And that bearing in mind that's the remastered version. Apparently, the PS5 version, which I haven't played, is better again.
Wow.
So it's kind of like, what do you do? So it's, but I mean, that for me, if you look at the middle right one where they're under sort
Mhm.
of the bridge,
Yeah.
level of detail, and that's just phenomenal.
Do you know what? I think the only thing that would have made this better is if it was open world. You know,
Yeah,
like you've got like Red Dead Redemption and you've got The Witcher and you've got like GTA. They're open world, but when you with the likes of Naughty Dog, you've got Uncharted and you've got The Last of Us. They're open world to a certain degree, but there's still elements that you can't get past. And I
yeah,
think if they was to do a Last of Us 3, I think that would be the expansion that everyone would be expecting. As a gamer myself, that is what I would be expecting.
Yeah, I kind of, I mean, to sort of elaborate a bit on that as well for myself. I mean, I play Souls games, so when they announced Elden Ring, I don't know if you've ever played a Souls game, but they're very linear. But you're going
Okay.
back and forward trying to work things out.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
When they announced Elden Ring, it became open world, and oh my god, how much that improved the Souls games was just phenomenal. What I would say with this though is that Last of Us, unlike Souls games, don't get me wrong, Souls games can be expensive to a degree. This is a big game. It's not small by any stretch of the imagination. I think
Yeah.
you're looking at least a 30-hour gameplay, at least,
Wow.
when you're playing it. If you want to do all the add-ons and unlock all the doors and things like that,
Yeah.
it's easily 40 hours plus. But but I think, yeah, you're right. If they do an open world first in this, I think it would improve it. However, I wouldn't want it to be too much
Yeah,
because
too
then
overpowering. Yeah.
it would take away from the story element, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously this is the first game. 2013 came out. Sensational. Heart wrenching, gut wrenching. And then when you think you've had enough of that, 5 years later, or what was it, 7 years later, they bring
Yeah.
out they bring out The Last of Us Part 2. So obviously this is set 5 years after The Last of Us ended, and it focuses on the two playable characters again. It focuses on Ellie and Joel. I don't want to say too much, spend too much time on this because obviously you've got like Leon and you've got Batman Dixon. That
Yeah.
if you're reading this, it kind of gives it away. But obviously number 2 came out, and again, it was the fastest selling PlayStation 4 exclusive with over 4 million units in its weekend release and over 10 million units by 2022. So in 2 years, it already surpassed what number 1 did. It's
Incredible.
And again, it won all of the Game of the Year awards, received multiple other accolades from award shows and gaming publications. And again, this is still selling because they've got the add-on part of this where you can do the second story and you can kind of follow Ellie through different elements of the gaming and stuff like that and build different relationships. But it just goes on and on and on. And this is like an open universe. They've got the comics and everything all tie into this. It's just, I think for me, this is probably one of the best things that Naughty Dog's done. Obviously, you've got Uncharted with Tom Holland, and that film, I think it didn't get as high a praise as it was expecting to get because
It
it didn't
was
really live
okay.
up to it. Yeah. But I mean, this again, and then if we just go into the screenshots, again, they've just elevated it again. And this is in PlayStation 4. If this ever comes out on PlayStation 5,
It is. That's the thing. It's out in PlayStation 5. So it's
oh, it
they
is.
didn't
Okay.
I think it's actually just been released or it's about to be released. I'm
Right,
not
okay.
too sure. But they are making it for PlayStation 5, so they're adding additional mechanics in because you've got the haptic feedback and stuff on the controller, which actually does add quite a lot of elements. So I'll be interested to see whenever you're getting bit by a clicker, which will happen a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What that's going to sort of, how that's going to reverberate
Mhm.
back. But I mean, I've got the PS3 version because that's what the first version was on the PS4. I've got the remastered version, and this is how much I like the game. I will get the PS5 version.
Yeah. But I mean, I think Leon has hit it straight on the head. It looks incredible. It's like you're playing a movie. And this, I mean, Elder Rings, you've got The Witcher, and you've got this. You kind of, I don't know about any other gamers, but when I kind of focus on a game, I put the headphones on and I kind of want to be immersed in it. I kind of want to get involved in it. I don't pay attention to anything around me. This is like when the cutscenes, I think someone on YouTube has put the cutscenes of part 1 and part 2 together, and it's like an animated film. And when you're playing it, it's like that because you're so focused on the gaming and what you've got to do and the emotions that come with each character that you're playing. You kind of are playing it like a movie. And I think Naughty Dog have got this down to a T, and it's amazing how they've done that.
There's one thing I noticed when this show, the guy who did the TV, because I've seen the same video that you've probably seen, where they've got the video shots from the TV show and the video shots from the game, and it shows you on the TV, the burning house, for example, is on the left-hand side, and on the game it's on the right-hand side. But if you notice that each time they do a comparison, everything's opposite, and I think the reason why he's doing that is they're doing it deliberately as a mirror to show the
Yeah.
reflection, so to have
Yeah.
it on the opposite side, so that
Yeah.
way for people to do that. It's actually it's one of those sort of wee things that actually when you're sitting watching it going, oh, what why is this way, this way, this way? And you don't know until you do the comparison.
Yeah.
But I thought it's actually quite, if they've done it deliberately, it's very smart the way
Yeah.
they've done it. It shows a mirror.
It is very, very smart. And I think I think with the computer games out of the way, and we're going to get into the nitty gritty of the first episode. I mean, I was highly excited. I was up 3 o'clock in the morning. I was watching it on a Sunday, and I was chomping at the bit because I was saying to my wife, "Let's watch it. Come on, let's watch it." Like, I'm going to be watching it anyway because I'm going to be doing a review show. So don't moan at me that, oh, you've watched something else that I wanted to watch. I was like, look, I'm watching it. It's got to be watched. So I kind of, as soon as I was up, I watched it, and here we are now. So that's the computer game out of the way. So what now? So obviously the computer game came out in 2013. The second one came out in 2020. It was released, I think the poster was released in 2021 in San Diego Comic-Con, and it was
Was
literally just a picture of a female holding a knife, and it just said, "Movie coming soon." The world blew up. Everyone knew it was going to happen. I mean, with a game like this, with all the awards that it's won, with all the accolades that it's received, it was inevitable that it was going to become a TV show. Fast forward 2023, we are here now. Now, this is it. HBO Max have absolutely fucking smashed it out of the park with this TV show. They've cast a fantastic array of actors to play certain characters. And when you get down into the nitty gritty of it, what they've done is pretty damn smart.
mm, I agree.
Like, it's just amazing.
I have to admit, whenever I seen the casting for Ellie, is Bella Ramsey from
Yes,
Game of
yeah.
Thrones. I initially thought to myself, I'm not sure of how she looks for the part. But then whenever you see her on the show and then compare her to her Game of Thrones character, if you watch her in Game of Thrones, it's basically that character transferred across, but it works well because that's the way Ellie is. She's a badass in the game. She's a badass
Yeah.
in the TV show.
hmm
Perfect for that.
So obviously, this is based on the award-winning PlayStation video game, a series of makers HBO breathes new life into the post-apocalyptic genre starring Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. Now, on September the 26th, 2003, a deadly parasitic virus sweeps across the globe, turning normal people into violent monsters. Governments collapse, million dies, and the military sweeps in to take control. Kind of like COVID in 2020, apart from it didn't get that far where the military had to sweep in, even though you was getting pushed off the streets by the old bill if you was out past your curfew. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the TV show is based in 2003. So 20 years later, we're in our current 2023. Whereas in a computer game,
hmm
the current takes off, the whole premise of it starts in 2013. Now, I kind of thought that was quite interesting to do because I think they've been the writer and the director and everything, they've been really smart because I think there's going to be certain elements of the TV show that they're going to directly compare with COVID because I think it's inevitable. This whole
hmm
show, the premises of it is a virus, it's a pandemic that's come out and it's wiped out everything. We had COVID that was potentially threatening to wipe out millions, and it did, unfortunately. And I think it's very close to the bone, it's very emotional, it's very gripping, but it's done so well that you kind of can't help but get so engrossed in it straight off the bat.
Yeah, no, that it's it's a what could maybe have happened, or if things had went completely south. But it's I think the way that this TV show was set up, it's the 20-year gap. I think will play quite well because if they're going to do multiple seasons of this, they
Yeah,
needed to have that gap.
yeah.
Where it sort of makes sense because you might touch on it a little bit later. Where at the very beginning of the show, it goes back to the 60s, I believe.
hmm
So and then they're fast forwarding obviously 40 years, then they're fast forward again another 20 years
hmm
on top of that. And I think it makes more sense because that was one of the things sort of in the game didn't make a lot of sense to me. It was almost like whenever you sort of see Joel and obviously what happens and how he becomes how he is, you you don't know if he's had enough time this season to
hmm
be what he is in the game. Do you know what I mean? So because in the game he's complete hard ass, he knows I mean people are afraid of him
Yeah.
already, but
hmm
in that such short period of time that made no sense. How would people know to be afraid of him? Where if to do
hmm
over a 20-year period, people will know to be afraid of him, and they're touching that
Yeah.
a little bit in the game, the show.
But you know what I like about this? You can see that the creative team have poured so much heart and energy into this because you get it time and time again where they kind of it's either a comic book that turns into a TV show or a computer game that turns into a movie, and they're two separate entities. It's like the computer game is the computer game and the movie is the movie. Here, you can see a direct correlation where it's just merged into one. And
Mhm.
I think because of the way that the computer game plays as a movie, the aspects of that are so well done into here. You can see it's perfectly matched.
Yeah.
But it's finally here. Like everyone was waiting for this to come around. Everyone was excited, thinking, "Is it going to come? Have they got the actors?" There was rumors floating about, but now that it's finally here, and I sat down and watched the episode, I don't think there was anything more that a first episode of a TV show could have done. It had everything, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I think they left certain elements of it out for later episodes for a reason, so that it builds up that tension. So when are you going to see the clickers? When are you going to
Yeah.
see the mutants? Because there's additional
Hmm.
mutants in it. There's a certain elements of it. There was a couple of bits in this that were actually quite scary.
Hmm. Yeah.
The old woman being one of them,
Oh.
sitting there in the background, and
Hmm.
it sort of has her all sort of it's the camera softened, so
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
quite see, you see her mouth opening, and something's going on, but then it goes away. But
Yeah.
something's going to happen there with
Hmm.
that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, obviously, so as we mentioned, the casting characters, I think they've done a fantastic. Like
mhm.
they've cast a perfect team. I mean, obviously they've got Pedro Pascal as Joe Miller. They've got Nico Parker as Sarah Miller. We've got Gabrielle Luna as Tommy Miller, Anna Torv as Tess Servopoulos. We have Bella Ramsey as Ellie Williams, and we have Merle Dandridge as Marlene. Now, the interesting thing about that is obviously Merle Dandridge is playing Marlene, but she was also the voice and played the character in the computer game.
And both of them, Last of Us 1 and 2.
In both of them, and then also we've got I can't remember her name. I think it is. Let me just have a quick look. It is going to be Ashley Johnson, who played Ellie's mum who voiced Ellie in the computer game. She's going to be playing her mum
No.
in the TV series.
So they're going to show her mum in the TV series
Yes,
now.
yep. So they're going to
Yeah.
show her mum in the TV series apparently, and then also we've got Troy Baker, who voiced Joel in the computer game. He's going to be playing a cannibal in the TV show. So the way that they've crossed over, I think, has been fantastic. I think it's been great. There's been so many subtle Easter eggs, which we'll get onto later, but you can see how much that they've taken references to a T from the
Mhm.
computer game. I mean, if we go back to the first slide, I mean, you got, I mean, just look at Joel, like like, and as you said, like it's kind of mirrored on the computer game. He's wearing his bag on his right shoulder. On the TV
Mhm.
show, he's wearing it on the left. It's, I mean, how did you find these? I was taken away by how
The detail.
perfectly. Oh my
Yeah.
god, the detail is second to none.
It was unreal. I mean, even when you go and look at the bedroom and the house,
Hmm. Hmm.
and the subtle things like the graffiti on the wall, and afterwards in Boston and stuff like that. And it is basically, I think the biggest one was the car, but we'll probably talk about that a
Hmm.
little bit later. But it was all those little nods to the game itself, which
Hmm.
kept you can tell that there's been a great deal of love put into this from the directors. They've obviously got a great deal of respect for the game and the
Hmm.
material they've used.
I mean, the attention to detail on the shot per shot recreation from the game is just it's amazing. And I think this TV show will be talked about time and time again. I mean, a lot of people are already comparing it to The Walking Dead, but obviously there's going to be similarities. There's zombies, there's like
Yeah.
mutants and stuff like that. But this for me is already better. The first episode is already better than the first two or three episodes of The Walking Dead, in my opinion. There's a
Yeah,
lot to go into it on them.
I wasn't a fan of Walking Dead.
Yeah.
The first couple of episodes, I did like the first few series. I just the first couple of episodes, I just found it slow.
Hmm. Yeah.
Where this has the right balance
Hmm.
between action and sort of the emotional side of things that have to occur in it.
Yeah. What's Leon? So Leon has said, my only worry is that there isn't enough story in two video games to sustain it. Walking Dead was amazing, but degenerated into running from the zombies, and anyone outside the group can't be trusted. Do you know
I
what,
would
Leon?
say,
I would say, I think having played the computer game, there's so much more backstory. I mean, we've only literally touched on 6 characters so far. We've touched on Joel, Sarah, Tommy,
Ellie.
Tess, Ellie, and we've touched on Marlene. So there's 7 characters in total. There's a whole plethora of characters coming. There's whole groups. There's everything. And I think, having not played the computer game, as you said, Leon, I think you're coming in this with fresh eyes. So I think it's going to be interesting for people that haven't played the game, because obviously we've kind of had all the gamers have had kind of technically like a sneak peek to what's coming up and stuff. But having not played the game, I think you've kind of got an advantage, because you've got that excitement about not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think as well with the game's quite immersive anyway. There's quite a lot of story in it, but the TV show has that advantage where it can, and it has done in this first episode, where it expands on the story. So there's certain things that it can't tell you in the game, because then it's going to take away from the gaming element, where the TV show can expand on it, and that's what it does. And I think it's what it does really well.
And I think it does. So these, I mean, what I've kind of done, I've just highlighted the characters that we kind of see straight off the bat, that are kind of focused in episode 1. So then, the review of the show, if we haven't already covered it already. So what we've got, so this show, the computer game starts off with, we kind of get to see Sarah waking up and stuff like that, and she's kind of wakes up in the house, and she's like, Dad, where are you? And she can't find him and stuff like that. The TV series has kind of flipped it on his head, and it's kind of what I like what it's done. It starts in 1968, and it's got these 2 professors, I think Dr. Newman and Dr. Shaughnessy or something. They're on this TV show, on a chat show, and they're talking about viruses, and they're talking about how it can affect the world. And Dr. Newman, who is the one on the left-hand side, they're talking about it, and he mentioned something, and all the audience kind of laugh and snigger at him, thinking, are you actually serious? Like, what the hell are you talking about? But the thing that he mentions, he kind of says that there's a virus that's traveling by air, and it can spread the globe at I think it like at a supersonic rate. And if that's not enough to drive it home that we can catch a virus, we could potentially die, then what the hell is gonna happen? And I think the real word that kind of hit him on the head was when he said pandemic, because then I kind of sat back and was like, the hairs on my neck stood up, and I was like, Jesus, this is a bit close to home, isn't it? Like, this is pretty close to home, because obviously the word pandemic means the world becomes sick all at once, and there's absolutely fuck all we can do about it.
Everyone, yeah. It's also the fact of what he's touched on as well, is that the virus is technically already there, but because there's not enough pollution, it needs temperatures to rise. So he's talking about pollution and how the environment is and things like that, that over time, as temperatures rise, this will then take effect. And that's also leading into what's happening now at the moment with the way the environment is. So it's not a fun chat, but it's it's scary, but it's good. It's really, really well done the way they've done it. And I think the character on the right was so underutilized. Not, I love him, and he's in so many different things.
Yeah, but it was really good, because obviously he's kind of sitting there thinking, you're chatting crap, like, you're talking about fungus, we're talking about airborne viruses, and then you're kind of sitting there talking about fungus, and even the TV host is like, are you having a laugh? Like, are you actually having a laugh? And it's kind of when I've kind of got one of the quotes here. It's kind of when he turns around and says, all viruses can make us ill, but what if fungi can alter our minds? And the crowd, and it's what happens if fungi can alter our minds? And then all the crowd laugh and stuff. And then he turns around and says, for instance, if the world gets slightly warmer, what's going to happen? And again, that's when my hairs on my neck were standing up, and I was like, I kind of looked into the TV a bit more, and I was more engaged, and I was like, I totally forgot I was watching a TV show. I was like, I want to know where this is going. I want to know what this professor's talking about. And then it's kind of, I started listening more intently. And then it's when he says any number, I think he says any number of fungus or fungi could actually become capable of burrowing into our brains and taking control, not of millions of us, but billions of us. And it's when he kind of says, and I think the host turns around and says, yeah, well, what happens if that happens? And he goes, well, we lose. And it kind of, that's it. That was it. We lose. And then you kind of just see the look on the audience, and they're kind of like in shock. They're all gasping. Even the professor on the right of him is like, okay, where do we go from here? And then the host is like, right, we'll cut to a break. Let's cut to a break. Even he's taken aback, because he was laughing and joking a minute ago, and he's like, this Dr. Newman's actually being serious.
Yeah.
Like if the heat starts to rise, this is the pandemic. This is the thing that we could be facing on a global scale.
It was a great way to open the show. Cheers. I'm
Mhm.
kind of glad they did this and not the exact scene by scene opening
Yeah.
for the game,
Mhm.
because it sets that premise up of what to
Mhm.
kind of expect.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, no, I agree. It was so well done. I'm kind of disappointed those two characters aren't
Yeah.
in the show, truth be
Yeah.
told.
Yeah.
But it's no, that was brilliant. Really, really well done.
Because I
Really
think
well
obviously there's 3 time hops. So this is obviously 1968, and
done.
then it kind of cuts, and then we go into a fantastic opening scene of, it's just you see this fungi, and it's kind of taking over everything, and it's growing. All the spores are coming together, and you kind of, but there's not much going on in it. It's kind of like it's telling the story without the narrative because you can kind of see from it. You've heard about what the virus potentially can happen, and then you get this intro, and then you see all the spores and everything's happening, and the fungi's growing and everything, and it's kind of coming to life what this Dr. Newman has said, and then we're flashed all the way forward to 2003, where we're introduced to the main characters of the show, as you were. We're introduced to Sarah and we're introduced to Joel. Now, for me, these characters are amazing. Like, let's be honest, like Pedro Pascal is obviously he's playing the Mandalorian.
Yeah,
He was in Game of Thrones. He's a fantastic actor, and I don't honestly think they could have picked anyone better to play the role of Joe Miller. I think he plays it phenomenally. I think his acting is on point. I think the chemistry he
yeah,
has with Nico is amazing, and it's I mean straight from the start, I just felt like I was playing the game again. And I don't know if that's a good thing because I kind of like, I want to get out of the gaming mode and kind of get into the TV series. And I think obviously where this is so similar, you're kind of always going to be making them comparisons, especially as a gamer as we are. We're always going to be making them comparisons. Like, oh, that happened in the game. Oh, that didn't happen. Oh, that would have been good in the game. But I think straight off the bat, we're kind of it opens up and it's Joel Miller's birthday and Sarah's kind of waking him up. His alarm hasn't gone off and she's downstairs cooking him breakfast and stuff like that. But what were your thoughts on this? Because I kind of was just taken aback with it and I kind of enjoyed it so much. I kind of just
yeah.
lost myself in a moment of it.
I what I've same as you. I kind of find myself comparing the game to the TV show, and it was taken.
Mhm.
I think it took a little bit of it away from the TV show
Yeah.
because the game itself, the opening scene in the game is probably one of the best opening
Mhm.
scenes in a game you will ever play slash watch because
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
There's no, you're not doing an action game at the start of the game. It's you're Sarah, you're walking about the house, you're doing this, what's going on at the moment,
Mhm.
and then there's something else that occurs, which we'll go into in a second or two. But it's one of those things where I just sat there thinking to myself, these two are doing such a great job of these
Mhm.
characters. Pedro Pascal, fantastic.
Mhm.
I always had Nathan Fillion in my head for
Yeah.
Joel, but I also had Nathan Fillion in my head for Uncharted as well.
Yeah.
So you know he could have done either or, but
Yeah.
Pedro Pascal has done a fantastic job. Um, the girl that plays Nico Parker plays Sarah.
Yeah.
Um, she got a lot of flack because she doesn't look anything like the actual character in the game, but
Yeah.
it matters nothing to me. It's how she portrays the character, and she portrays the character
Yeah.
fantastically well.
I just thought like obviously with the computer game, it starts with Sarah waking up and Joel's not there and the sirens are going off and everything, and you're kind of thrust into that. Whereas I think what the TV series did differently, obviously with the two doctors and the professors talking, that couldn't have been done in a computer game. That would have
No,
been that would have been a cutscene. Starting a game like that with a cutscene like that, you'd get bored because you'd be sitting here thinking,
you want to play
this
the game.
this ain't what I've paid £52 for. This ain't what I bought the computer game for. You want to watch it, you want to play it. So I think as the similarities go, they've done a perfect balance because, as I said at the start of the show, there's things that are going to be comparable that are going to work in TV and gaming, and there's things that aren't. And I just think, as Leon said, watching The Warning in 1968 with the post pandemic and then flashes to 2023, it does give you a jolt. It does
Mhm,
because it makes you sit up, it makes the hairs on your neck stand up, and you think, this is a TV show I'm going to be in for the long haul.
mhm.
And if that's done that with people that haven't played the game, I think they've already got their specific audience now. I think they've already got their target market. They've already hit the nail on the head with what they're trying to get, what they're going to get from this TV show, what they got from the game. And I think they're going to get a huge fan base now that
Yeah.
are going to cross over going back to the computer game and wanting to play it again and stuff like that.
Because it's almost like the game itself the game is obviously showing first what the TV show is going to be. This elaborates on what happens before the start of the game, which
Yeah.
is a good thing to do. It shows
Mhm.
how where the watch came from, how she got the watch and things like that. And the watch is actually a pivotal thing that happens between Ellie and Joel in the game as well.
Yeah.
The discussion, how they open up and things like that.
Mhm.
I don't think people realize the game's quite emotional throughout it.
Mhm.
It's one of those ones where I like how it's elaborating. I like knowing where the background, where everything sort of came from that you
Mhm.
can't get in the game because, like you said, if you do, you're going to lose interest in the game.
Yeah.
But in the TV show, different story altogether.
Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely. And this is what I kind of want to do. I didn't want to show slides from every single part of the TV show because I don't want to give too much away. But this is quite significant because obviously at the start of it, Joel wakes up. It's his birthday. His brother Tommy comes up. They've got a job to go to. Sarah's there cooking breakfast, and they're saying, "Right, get ready. You've got 10 minutes. We're going to give you a lift to school." She runs upstairs. She gets her dad's broken watch. She takes some money out of his drawer, and then off they go. They go to school. And there was quite a fun thing in there because obviously the neighbour next door is an elderly woman. Her husband's there feeding her breakfast, and he's like, "Oh, when are you coming over? Like, she's missing you. She wants to see you." And they have a banter. They're like, "Oh yeah, yeah. My dad likes cookies. He'll be over soon." And he's like, "Oh no, Sarah finishes school, so she'll be over soon." So the relationship and the chemistry is amazing. Like they're
Mhm.
joking, and it was like a really nice, heartfelt moment between a single father and a daughter.
Yeah.
And I thought the way that they played that was amazing. So then
Mhm.
obviously it goes on. Sarah goes to school. She's sitting there in school, and it was just it all kind of happened quite quickly. And there were subtle things that we go on to when we go through the Easter eggs at the end. But I don't know if you noticed it, but there's something in there, and I was like, "Oh, is that meant to be there? Is that going to be significant?"
Mhm.
And then it kind of comes back out, and she gets the warning from school and stuff, and she goes and sees her neighbour. And then we kind of get to this in a roundabout way. We're kind of Sarah finishes school, and the
Mhm.
next thing we know, she's in her neighbour's house, and she's done what she said. She's gone next door, but she seems to have a really comfortable relationship with the neighbours. I mean, she's sitting there, she's making cookies, she's sitting there doing her homework like she would do at her own house. I mean, that was quite endearing to see that.
Yeah, it was, and the only reason, I mean, I think this part occurs. This obviously occurs after that,
Hmm.
because the dog comes over to the house, and then she brings the dog back over to the
Hmm.
house, and that's when she goes in. And that's at that point, it's you know, sh- sh- shit hits the fan essentially. Um,
Yeah.
so it's that, but it's that fungi. It's the interesting takeaway. They've got the fungi coming out, and before the show, you made a mention about who this character actually looks like, which is the character from Saw.
Hmm.
And when you see it, you can't unsee it. It's
Yeah.
just one of those things. But
It does look like Jigsaw. It does.
does. But this is where it sort of makes it an interesting take on zombies because it's not quite zombie. There's something else entirely.
Mhm.
But but this is sort of the first stage of the virus. You That's where 20 years later you'll know what the later stages are and
Yeah,
what's occurring at that point, which the
yeah.
game goes through.
But I mean, it's quite significant because obviously Sarah's around there, she's kind of doing her homework, and this is the elderly woman that was being fed at the front
Snowy
of,
shark.
of the house by her husband, yeah. And while she's kind of doing her homework, and I think she's kind of packing her bag ready to go, there's a scene, as you mentioned at the start of the show, where it kind of softens the camera on this character, and you kind of see her twitching and tweaking and pulling all these faces, and it's totally unbeknown to Sarah, who's kind of facing the other way. And even when she turns round, this character's kind of
Normal.
gone back to normal.
Mm,
She's gone back to normal. So then you kind of think, well, hold on, what happened in the school in the first scene? You've already been given an early sign. But that I just didn't think anything of that. And it was only when I watched this part and went back to that, I was like, that's so smoothly done and so significant
yeah.
that when we touch on the Easter eggs later, I'll kind of go more into it. But I mean, this was just horrendous. Like this was freaky. This was so scary because obviously after this scene, we kind of go, Sarah goes back home, and she kind of sits down, and Joel said to her in the morning, look, I'll be home at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock, the job will be finishing. I'll be home. And she's like, Dad, it's your birthday. Like, you haven't even got a cake. I was like, look, I'll bring a cake. I will bring a cake. And before you know it, she's gone home. She's borrowed a DVD off this woman's mum, off this woman's daughter. And it was quite touching because that was her birthday present, along with the watch that she got fixed for him. That was kind of her birthday present. She was looking forward to him coming home. And I kind of thought shit was going to hit the fan between them two. I thought she was going to lose her temper. She was going to get the hump with him. And I kind of thought in the computer game, you know how it goes, but I thought in this TV show, I thought she was going to kind of run off. Do you know what I mean? Run off and get lost and stuff like that. But it didn't happen. It stayed true to the computer game. And she kind of sitting there, she's waiting for Joel to come home. Joel comes home, and obviously he ain't got the birthday cake. It's 10 o'clock at night. He arrives home, and she kind of sits there and says, one of the great Easter eggs in it is like, she sits there and says, well, come on, like, relax. Yeah, if you don't get a birthday cake tomorrow, you're not getting your birthday present. He's like, look, I promise I'll bring it back. And she pulls out his watch that she's fixed and stuff. And he says, well, where did you get the money from? And she's like, oh, I'm selling drugs.
Some drugs.
And that is exactly word for word what Sarah says in the computer game.
And I think there's a few scenes like that as well, where it's word for word what they use in the computer game.
Yeah.
And it's whenever it's the TV show was the relationship between the two of them is just so good.
Yeah.
I can't go. What I want to say I can't because I don't want to spoil something later. So it's kind of
But so I mean, that kind of happens, and then they both fall asleep on the sofa. I think Sarah falls asleep on Joel's lap, and then Joel gets a call, and it's from his brother Tommy, and he's like, look, I've done some crazy shit. I got in a fight. I hit a guy. I've been arrested. Can you come and get me from prison? Can you come and bail me out? So Joel kind of does it, and he goes and bails out Tommy, and the next thing you know is he's putting Sarah to bed. All the lights, all hell's broken loose, basically. Sarah wakes up, there's planes, helicopters going over, there's fucking lights going off, and she's kind of looking around. And then we kind of get back to where the computer game starts.
Yeah.
So then you're kind of, right, I'm back in the room now. I'm back in the room. This is the computer game. This is what I'm used to. This is what we're going to get to. And I thought that was really good because you kind of get the premise of what the TV show's about. You kind of get to know the character development, the relationship between certain characters, and then you're thrust into the upheaval and the damn right scariness of what's happening. So then shit hits the fan. They go over. She runs over to her neighbours. She sees this, comes out. Joel turns up with Tommy, smacks her in the head with the wrench. And all hell breaks loose. I mean, they only live in like a little cul-de-sac. They rock up in the car, and then like Tommy and Joe are like, right, get your stuff, get in the car. We're going to go. And then they kind of drive, and World War III is basically kicking off. To the unknown viewer, World War III is kicking off. Like, these poor people don't know what the hell's going on. They're driving past people, eating each other, killing each other. Riots are kicking off. They drive past a little family on the road. And again, that was similar to what happened in the TV, in the computer game. And
it's
again,
almost scene for scene what happens in the computer game. And it's from the same viewpoint in the computer game as well, where it's in the back seat of the car. You're looking out, you have the ability to actually look about you when you're in the car itself.
Yes.
And it is almost scene. It is extended a little bit, but it is almost scene for scene. And I remember sitting watching the TV on Monday when I've watched, I think, about 1 o'clock on Monday. I'm sitting watching that scene. I'm sitting there going, I felt like picking a controller up and just pretend I was playing it, because that is what was going on. But it's the things that occur, and like you said, going past that family. It was kind of like, Joel says, no, leave them to be all right, or Tommy wants to pick them up, and Ellie wants to pick them up and stuff, and they're with a young child, and it shows the desperation that Joel has, that he wants to get his family to safety.
And I think what Bat Dan said, I only got this far on the show, so I'm going to sling my hook, finish the episode, and finish your stream over the weekend. Dan, thank you, honestly. Thank you very much for joining. Drop a comment in the chat once you've seen this, and let us know what you thought of the TV show. And then we've got Mr. Brian Margarito Garcia Fonseca, the viruses. Yes, indeed, we're talking about viruses. We're talking about pandemics. So get your mask on, sit back, chill out, and relax. So World War Three's kicking off. We've kind of done this. We've dealt with Jigsaw from from Saw, and they're driving off into the distance, and something really, really heart gripping, tugging at the heartstrings happens. And I don't know about you, but I wasn't prepared for it yet. I wasn't prepared for what was coming. I hadn't psyched myself up enough.
Yeah, and I knew it was coming because I played the game a few times. I finished the game twice. I've played it 3 times, but I got halfway through it on the third attempt.
Hmm.
So the start always sort of gets you. But I remember the first time playing it and watching it, and then going, "No, they didn't just do
Yeah.
that." Did they? And then when the TV show came, I said, "Don't get too attached. Don't get too attached. Don't get too
Hmm.
attached." And what
Yeah.
happened? I got too attached.
Yeah.
Um, it's gut wrenching, and they again, it's almost scene for scene in the game
Hmm.
as well. It was
Yeah.
it was so well done. True,
Hmm.
it was so well done.
Yeah, and I mean that kind of happens, and then you're kind of just sitting back. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was sitting back thinking, "Wow, that's an impactful start for the show." Like it's amazing. You know it's coming because of the computer game, but you still kind of to actually see it as a motion picture. You're kind of like, "Wow, this is." You could being a father, I was kind of like, "How would you get through that? Like, how would you actually deal with that?"
And that's the thing. I have a 7-year-old daughter. She's obviously not the same age as what Sarah is and that, but you're kind of
Yeah,
sort of there going, just if that happened to my daughter, how would I cope? What way would I react? And
yeah,
things like that. I actually
yeah,
looked over at my wife when we were watching this. I knew this was coming.
yeah,
And my wife's quite an emotional person anyway, but you could just sort of see the red
yeah.
around her eyes and stuff, and this. And whenever you see that sort of happen, the TV show has hit its mark.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So then that obviously happens, and then we have the third flash forward of the TV show when we get to Boston 2023. So obviously the TV show with Sarah and what happens with Joel when the pandemic kicking off is in 2013.
Mhm.
This kicks off in 2023. And this for me, this was quite a poignant part of the show because there was a point of me thinking, who is this character? This is a new character. We haven't seen him before. Is he gonna is this someone that's going to carry on and stuff like that? And then again, what happens to this character was an actually bloody dagger to the heart. I was not expecting what happened to him because obviously this poor little kid, he's actually been through the ringer. Like he's been through his shit.
Mhm.
There's some serious stuff going on, and he's kind of like looking out, and this is a poignant picture. I mean, they're looking out over the whole of Boston. It's absolutely derelict. It's been ravaged by
Yeah.
zombies and the spores and everything like that. And when they kind of zoomed in on his face, I was kind of like, what the hell have you been up to? Like, I wanted to know his backstory more. I kind of wanted to know where he'd come from,
It
where
looked
his
as though he was
parents
shocked,
and everything. Yeah, yeah.
which you would be if you were probably walking through, but it's what happens to him when he's walking through. You kind of sort
Mhm,
of know what's going on, but then again, you're guessing, is that actually the case? Is something else going to happen? And
mhm.
yeah, and you kind of want to know where he did come from, to be why,
Yeah.
where was his parents, where were people looking after him, or
Mhm,
whatever it might be. But it was you're going from that emotional scene to
mhm.
this, and this
Yeah,
hit me almost as hard
yeah,
whenever it's actually about 5 minutes after you see
yeah.
this child,
Mhm.
and he gets picked up by the people, and
Yeah,
he's brought in, sat down, and they go to give him an injection, but you don't see what happens after that point. But
yeah,
2
yeah,
or 3 minutes later, and that you do see what happens, and you sit
yeah,
there going, "Whoa!"
yeah. Because I kind of when it was the Fedra agents, wasn't it? It was the Fedra
Yeah.
that were kind of saying to him, "Look, you're going to be okay," because obviously they take with the pandemic and the virus now, very similar to COVID. They take his temperature and either flashes up green or red if you've got the virus. They kind of do it, and the one of the officers that does it kind of looks at the woman who's talking to the child and is like, "Don't worry, you're going to be fine here. You have a little injection, and we'll look after you. We'll give you your favorite food, and we'll give you loads of toys to play with. And would you like that?" And the kind of kid, he just springs to life, and it's kind of it looks like he's becoming a kid. He's going back to a kid again because he's
Oh, oh,
clearly been through something horrific,
yeah, yeah.
and you kind of think, "Oh, this is going to have a nice ending. This is going to happen?" Like, fuck, does it? Honestly, the look in his kid's eyes were like, he's
It's the hope.
finally safe. It's the hope. It is, and the hope is drastically ripped out the palm of his hands, and then we kind of cut forward again, And we see
And that's the
Joel.
small mercy. It's that
Yeah.
cut. Can you imagine if they had it elaborated on that even more? Oh my! After what happened minutes prior, I don't think you could have taken much more than that. I think it might have been a bit too much for people. It
I
was.
didn't see that happening. I think I was quite naive where she's kind of like, "Oh, you're going to be okay now. You get your toys, your food," and the hope in his face. He was like, "Yeah, there is hope. I'm going to be okay now." And then when it flashes forward, you kind of see Tess, and we're introduced to Tess for the first time, and you kind of see Joel, and you're kind of in this like enclosure surrounding, and there's a massive fire, and there's people throwing bags and bags of bodies on, and I was kind of like, even at that point, I was still thinking, this kid's all right, isn't he? And then you kind of a van pulls up and his body's on there, and Tess kind of looks at the back and she's like, I can't do it. And
Mm,
then Joel appears, and you're like, Joel, oh my God, the hero's arrived. Wonder how he's coping after 20 years. And he kind of just doesn't even bat an eyelid, picks
thanks.
up the kid, picks him up. And you only know it's this kid because of the significant and how focused they were on the trainers.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like in the back of this vehicle, you see these legs and you see these trainers, and Joel just literally picks him up and just throws him like he's a bag of rubbish. And you kind of, at that moment, you kind of realize that everything that Joel went up to leading to this moment, he's now become the badass that he was
Yeah,
in the
he's
computer game.
desensitized from
Yeah,
everything that goes on.
yeah, yeah,
So he makes that hard. That he knows that he has to make the hard decisions, which you
yeah,
do a lot in the game.
yeah, yeah.
It's yeah.
And it's kind of like, so obviously in 2023, it's kind of focused in Boston. And what would you say is where they are? It's like a compound, isn't it? They've been
Yeah,
set
I
up.
think I think it's basically it's obviously at this point it's where the military rule. Essentially, it's like a
Yeah.
totalitarian
Mhm.
um, world that everybody lives in. So the military rule, and then you've obviously got the Fireflies, which we'll talk a little bit later on, that are
Mhm.
sort of like the uh, people that that are trying to fight for their freedom and all the rest of it. Because the military are so
Yeah.
ruthless in what they
Mhm.
do. You can't go out after certain times. You have to be subject to regular testings. You can't. It's basically your freedom of life is taken away
Yeah.
from you,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to a degree. But it was but yeah, the area they're in is basically just completely run by them
Mhm.
altogether. So but it's also you can see people sort of fighting for scraps as
Yeah.
much as they can. It's like when Joel goes to get the
The
jobs,
ration cards. Yeah.
yeah, and everything else in relation to it. So you can see how much of a hold the military actually has on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And it's kind of like they're in this compound, and then they don't work for the Fedra, but they kind of they're having to. Like
Yeah,
they're having to do it to get by because obviously the Fedra's doing stuff. As you mentioned, the military is literally there's no shits given. Like it's a new world order. The military, they're the new world order. The Feds are going to do what's right. They're going to try and rebuild, or do they want to keep it as it is? So there are similarities between certain elements in The Walking Dead and this. Um, but then again, we kind of find out a bit more about Joel. That we kind of find out that he's dodgy dealings and he's kind of working with Fedra to get information and kind of give ration cards and get money and cigarettes and stuff like that. And then we kind of find out more about Tess, and we're kind of thrown into it. And she's been like tied up, and she's kind of pleading for her innocence. She's got black eye, she's bloodied and bruised. And this is when we're introduced to Robert. Now, Robert in the computer game is a bit of a dick.
he's a bit of a dick in this.
And he is a bit of a dick in this, and it's kind of like, again, this is different to the computer game
Mhm.
because in the computer game, I'm going to give out spoilers, so if anyone's watching this and haven't watched the TV show already, either mute it or come back to it. But in the computer game, Robert, and in this as well, Robert nicks a car battery from Tess that Tess and Joel were trying to sell to get information to find out where Tom is and stuff like that. In the computer game, Joel kills Robert, batters the shit out of him, kills him. But in this, the scene that you see in a computer game of Joel beating Robert is kind of flipped on its head because it's now Robert that has beaten up Tess and she's pleading for her innocence. So it's kind of roles reversed. And I
Mhm.
thought that was quite good how they did that because it was like Tess is sitting there pleading her innocence, like, well, you stole off me, you've beaten me up. I'm okay with that. Just let things go back to normal. And
Yeah, I can remember much about Robert, to be honest with you, because it's such a small part in the game as well.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, yeah.
you do remember he's just a dick. And of
Absolute dick. So then, and then out of nowhere, what I don't even know what blew the wall out.
no, um, it's a weird one because it's that part of the story didn't really make a great deal of sense. It just seemed
Mm.
to jump.
Yeah, yeah,
It's almost like they've left something out. But to be
yeah.
fair, they have a runtime to have to adhere to for the show, and there's so
That's
much to
it.
fit in.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, because obviously, like, she's been tied up, and she's kind of Tess is like, look, just let me go. Like we're all trying to fight for survival here. Let's just get out. And this the walls crash down. It's either a bomb that goes off or a vehicle crashes in. We don't know. And as you said, it's kind of like it jumped because then the next thing we see is Joel at a public hanging. A public massacre of three people that have either that have been out during past curfew, or they've tried to sell ration cards, and you got one of the federal agents or the federal officers reading out what they've done wrong, and I was like, "Boy, this is like there's no punches pulled here. You've got three people up there. They're about to public crucifixion. They're about to be hung, and everyone's there watching it. It was like the entertainment."
mm. the I quite actually like that character, the guy who played the federal agent
Yeah, yeah,
in it. He sort of,
mhm,
because you see, I think I'm almost sure that it's like Joel has flashbacks to what happened with Sarah with
yeah,
him,
yeah, yeah,
which I think it actually occurs later on
yeah.
when they're leaving this compound, so to speak.
Yeah, because obviously he kind of sees a public hanging, and out the corner of his eye, this federal agent kind of catches his eye, and you're kind of like, right, so there's something going on here. Like there's kind of rations and everything, like information being sold, and then it kind of cuts again to Joel doing like his dodgy dealings around the corner, speaking to this federal agent. This federal agent's giving him information. Joel's giving him over cigarettes, and you kind of think there's an end game to this. There's like something's going on. Joel literally does not give a shit about anything now. He's kind of going to
He
get to what he's got to get to. He's going to do what he's got to survive,
just wants to
and
find Tommy,
that's
and
it.
that's
He
all.
just wants to find his brother. So then again, we kind of go forward and we find out that Joel's got this information and he wants to find Tommy, who's at this radio station. And then obviously in the computer game, you don't find out what happened between Tommy and Joel until later on. And
No,
they're keeping the same timeline with this as well, because you're constantly guessing, well, we found out what happened to Joel. Where's Tommy in all of this? Did Tommy die within the 20 years? What's Tommy doing? And you kind of get to the understanding that as Joel goes up into his flats, there's a load of queues, and these people obviously use their rations to try and reach out to their family members that they've lost contact with, and they want to find out. And I thought it was quite interesting, as it seemed like Joel was a known face. It seemed like Joel was very much known around the compound, and even in the computer game, Tess is like, "You used to be a badass. People hate you. People don't like you."
yeah.
But when the TV show first started, he was a family man. Like people liked him and stuff.
And that goes back to what I was saying earlier,
Yeah,
where I think the timeline makes more sense having over 20 years, where
yeah,
he's been able to build up that
yeah,
reputation. Where if you'd done
yeah,
it over the timeline in the game, that would
mhm,
never have happened.
yeah, yeah,
So it makes more sense to do it this
mhm,
way,
yeah.
for me anyway.
Yeah, and it's just the fact that as he walks up, I think one of the people in the queue says there's a queue, and he kind of just looks, ignores them, and he just walks straight into like what is it, a radio station, a family owned like radio station in
Yeah.
this flat, in this block of flats, and he kind of just sits down, gives over these cigarettes, and he's like, "Have you heard anything?" No, and he's obviously been searching for Tommy
Mhm.
constantly every 3 weeks. He's searching, and the guy at the other end that's running everything, he's like, "I haven't heard. Like, I'm sending signals out. I'm sending signals out." And he's like, "You've clearly missed it when you're asleep." And he's like, "Look, my daughter is." Funny line was, "It's my daughter, the intellectual one that runs it when I'm asleep, not my son who hasn't got a clue. God bless his soul." And I was like, "Bloody hell, why do you don't give your son no credit?" And then obviously they're trying to find Tommy, so I think that's going to play a big part in episode 2,
Yeah.
because I think in the computer game, it takes a lot longer to get to this point. Whereas obviously, as you
Mhm.
mentioned, there's a runtime for the TV series. There's only 9 episodes, which is interesting because then again, Joel's like, "I don't give a shit. Where's the fucking map? Show me the map." And the guy's like, "Are you serious? Like, one, how are you going to get out of the compound? Two, Federal will kill your ass. And three, you got the Fireflies. Like, there's three components there that are literally telling you that you're not going to make it, you're not going to find your brother. But Joel does not give a shit. And he's like, "Look, I'm going to go out and find him." Then he heads back to his flat. And then what does he do? Digs up the floorboards.
And all the stuff that's sitting underneath. What was it with the record player as well, or radio that comes in? There's a song that they're waiting on, or something that happens. I can't remember what it was, but it was
That's at the
significant.
that's at the end.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
significant to that. But you see him sitting with something happens with Ellie. Actually, that's after he meets Ellie.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So he kind of digs up his hidden stash under the floorboards, and I was kind of interested. And I kind of paused it at that point, and I kind of looked through it and stuff, and it was
it's stuff from the
what
game.
yeah, it's stuff from the game, and it was amazing. Again, the attention to detail, just them little things
It's
is
like the wrench where you can use the wrench for only so many in the game. You can only
yeah,
use it like 3 or 4 times before it breaks.
yeah,
Then you have to find more parts to fix
yeah,
things. And
yeah,
but it
yeah,
does something nuts. The hammers, it's
yeah,
all those subtle nuts for
yeah,
weapons or that might not necessarily be weapons, but will be
hmm
utilized as such
yeah,
because of the ammo is a premium, which the
yeah,
military has.
yeah,
So it's and again it's just those soft touches
yeah,
and nods to the game I absolutely loved throughout
yeah.
this episode.
And you know what? I think like it wasn't necessarily a time hop, but the kind of once he's done that, he kind of puts everything back and he kind of takes his pills and he kind of just lays down in his bed, and he kind of again he kind of thinks about the past, he thinks about Sarah, and he thinks about what he could have done differently and how he like could have changed it. And then all of a sudden, who walks in? Tess kind of walks in and cradles him in bed and like lays in bed, and that's kind of when you realise they're actually a couple, because for a TV show you're kind of like, well, who's going to fall in love with Joel? Like Joel's a
Mm.
hard ass. Like who's going to fucking fall in love with him? And you can see the relationship, and you can kind of see subtle emotions at the start when Tess and Joel were there and they're burning their bodies and stuff like that. But even though I played the game, I still couldn't I still was waiting for that to happen. I was like, "Really?" I totally forgot about it, and it kind of, like, came left field. I was like, "Oh my god, yes, Tess is actually with Joel."
Yeah, and it's something that I found out as well. There's certain relationships that I've completely forgotten all about.
Yeah,
Even though I've played
yeah,
it a few times, I still can
yeah,
because I've played so many games since then. So it's hard to
yeah,
remember every single nuance and
mhm,
character and
yeah,
relationship goes on in it. But once you see it happen, it all sort of clicks into place,
yeah,
and you're kind of like going, "Yeah, this
yeah,
makes sense." But one
yeah,
thing I know about this TV show is you like character, you love all the characters, and the characters are very well fleshed out and very well done.
yeah.
You just don't get too attached to a lot of them.
No, that's
Some
the
you
thing.
can, some you can't. Won't say
That's
who
it.
because you don't want to ruin it. Um,
Exactly.
but it's just I think your woman who plays Tess, Anna Torv,
Yeah.
who I loved, and I don't know
Mhm.
if you ever watched Fringe, but she
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
fantastic in Fringe as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
And I didn't recognize her at first
No, no.
until yeah, and it dawned. I was sitting going, I know, I couldn't think where it was, and then it dawned on me
Yeah,
who she was. But it's I don't think there's a single weak person in this show who
no.
acted, and we still haven't touched on one of the main characters yet.
Well, do you know what I mean? So again, talking about the main character, so again, there's another flash forward, and we finally meet her. We
Mm.
finally meet Bella Ramsey. We finally get to meet Ellie Williams. Now, this is it. Is it Ellie or is it Veronica? And I thought that was quite good because obviously we don't know much about her. We're kind of thrust into it. We kind of see this poor girl chained to a radiator in an absolute derelict building, and the first thing we see is that someone comes in and says, "Count to 10." Count to 10. So I was kind of like, I watched this TV show. Obviously, I played the game. I watched this TV show and I was kind of like, I'm going to go into this with fresh eyes. I'm going to go into it and pretend I've never played the game before. And I was chomping at the bit. I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen with this character? Like, this is Ellie. Like, this is we know that she's going to be okay. She's such a great actor. She's
Mm.
fantastic.
She uh, she is a fantastic actress, but I think she's doing the same character that she did in Game of Thrones. She was a
Yeah,
badass in Game of Thrones, only obviously
yeah,
she was a lot younger then.
yeah, yeah,
But in this, she's a badass in this as well. And I think she plays that type of character so well. She's got the mannerisms for it. The face is down pat. It's that sort of like,
yeah, yeah.
it's
There's no emotion. There's nothing
no,
there.
exactly. And it's
Yeah.
some of her comebacks are so
Hmm.
quick.
Yeah.
She's quite witty. She's also very intelligent, which people you probably don't see as much. Actually, no, you do. because you
Yeah.
can see the sort of intelligence that she has.
Yeah.
There's that survivalist
Hmm.
intelligence that she has, which
Yeah.
you find as the scenes play out
Yeah.
and it goes along. I'll be
Yeah.
honest, the character that plays Marlene,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't realize it was the same until just before the show that it was the same character who was in the
Yeah.
games in Last of Us 1 and 2.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. It's exactly it. And I mean, if you look at this picture here, and then if you kind of, if we go back to, I think it was that one, this
Yeah.
outfit that she's wearing there is exactly the same of what she's kind of got on here.
Hmm.
And even like the pose, and I thought it was great because obviously this is the first time we see Ellie. This is the first time we see Marlene. Now, a bit of history between this is that Marlene has kind of taken Ellie because Marlene was a friend of Ellie's mum. And obviously the whole backstory is that Ellie can't get infected. She can't get the virus. So she's kind of worth
Hmm.
her weight in gold. Like she's like a fucking diamond in the rough. Because if anyone finds out about her, it's all gonna go, she's gonna die.
Hmm.
Because they're gonna fucking want to kill her to find out why she can't get infected, and they're probably gonna kill her to get a to get like to get the
Yeah,
bloody
I'm not quite sure if the military actually want her alive either. Not
yeah,
for to be able to find a cure, but so that
yeah,
they can maintain power.
hmm,
So it's kind of, it's on one hand, the Fireflies want her for this reason to find a
yeah,
cure. Military want her possibly to kill her.
yeah,
And so she's just trying to find a semblance to be able to survive,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
why she is the way she is. I think you don't, if I recall from the game, you never ever see Ellie's mother
yeah.
at all,
You
apart
don't
from maybe a
know.
picture, and
Yeah,
that's it. Um, so I like how this elaborates again on her backstory and her
hmm,
mother and stuff like that. And like you said, apparently her mother's going to be in the show at some point. So
yeah,
I actually really look forward to watching the scenes with her in
yeah.
it.
Yeah, because I think it's gonna be interesting because obviously for people watching this to begin with, this is Marlene is kind of like Miss Firefly.
Yeah,
She's
she's
kind
a
of
leader.
she's the leader of the Fireflies, and the Fireflies. Do you want to elaborate on what the Fireflies actually are?
They're basically they
At a rebellion.
plant, yeah, they're the rebellion essentially. They plant bombs to try and disrupt the military from delivering stuff to and from different places. They basically trying to make a life for the
Hmm.
regular Joe, so to
Yeah,
speak, and
yeah,
that's essentially it. But
yeah,
at the same time, they're also trying to find a cure. They are
hmm,
technically anti-heroes if
yeah,
when you're playing the game and you
yeah,
realize that when you're playing it.
hmm,
So they're not quite the heroes of the game. They're
yeah,
anti-heroes. I don't want to go into too much more because it would ruin the whole thing.
yeah.
So
But yeah, I mean, so we kind of see the relationship between this, and it's hostile to
mhm.
say the least. I mean, because Marlene kind of comes in halfway through and was like, "Look, here's your knife back. I'm going to unchain you, but you need to tell me something." And she's kind of asking these questions, and then you kind of see a relationship building. I think it's a frustrated relationship more than anything because I think Ellie understands that Marlene's keeping her here for her best interest. She's kind of trying to do the best by her mum. But then on the flip side of that, she's kind of like, well, if you're trying to do the best for me, why you got me chained
End up,
to
yeah,
a radiator? Do you know what I
makes
mean?
it. And you can understand completely where she's coming from in
Yeah,
relation to that. But it's more, I think it's probably because Ellie's possibly tried to escape a few times and
yeah,
get
yeah,
away from it. She doesn't want to be
yeah,
a guinea pig.
yeah.
Um, but would it be right in saying that they reveal something in the beginning of this that isn't revealed until much, much later in the game where
Hmm.
she is potentially the cure? Because I don't
Yeah.
remember that happening for quite a bit in the game.
No, I think it's where they kind of where Joel and Tess kind of get together and they're going to find Robert and they find out Robert's dead. And then
Mm,
they see the first clicker and then they kind of come through the back of this building and everyone's dead effectively. Like Marlene's been shot, her right hand's been shot. Ellie kind of bursts out of a room and she's holding a knife and she goes for Joel. And then we kind of find out the whole emphasis on the importance of Ellie and her having to being used as a human cargo to be transported. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think in the computer game, I think when they go out all through the tunnels and stuff, and we'll touch on that, where they go through the tunnels and they come up face to face with the federal agent who Joel has been working behind the scenes with.
mhm.
I can't remember if in the computer game it comes out that she's. I think it does. I think in the computer game she does confirm to Tess
Yeah.
that I think it's played out differently. I don't think she kind of
I don't
turns
think
around and
Joel knows though until much
no,
later. That's what
no.
it is. I
I
don't know.
think
The
she
problem
keeps it
just
quiet.
didn't sit right with me with the way the game plays out. It,
Yeah.
it, it doesn't really make that much
Mhm.
difference, to be honest with you, because you
No.
kind of know this is what she
Yeah.
is. She's going to be
Yeah.
potentially secure, but it's
Yeah.
no. I think if you look at the costumes, I mean, they're on point for exactly what they were
Yeah.
in every
Yeah.
single character.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, it's that attention to detail. The
Yeah.
knife is a good nod as well, because
Yeah.
Ellie always carries the knife in the game.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's yeah, it's those subtle things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even like when Joel attacks. So obviously they've been told to get on their hands and knees, and the federal agent is taking their temperature, and obviously it goes green, green, and then it goes red to Ellie. You kind of
Mhm.
see Tess's face, and she's like, "What the fuck?" Like she's infected, and she's like, "No, no, no, I'm not infected. I'm not infected." Look, blah 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 blah. But by this point, she's already turned around. She's already stabbed the federal agent in the leg.
Mhm.
Joel's just had to lose his shit and goes for him. And I don't know if it was meant to be, but it kind of seemed like a subtle little Easter egg to when he gets beaten up by the mountain in Game of Thrones, and his eyes get punctured and pushed out of his skull because there's a quick little scene in it where Joel's punching the hell out of this Fedra police officer, and it looks like his eyes are gone. It looks like his eyes have gone. So I don't know if that was a subtle nod to Game of Thrones. If it was very well done.
I genuinely didn't notice that. I just remember him obviously punching and just constantly punching him until he was just done
Yeah.
out. But that just prior to that, when they're going underneath, when they're
Mhm.
leaving the buildings and leaving
Yeah.
underneath, going underground,
Mhm.
under the buses, that's
Yeah.
exactly what happens in the
Exactly
game.
the same. Exactly the same.
Exactly the same. And
Yeah.
if that anybody who's never played the game, if this doesn't give you an incentive to go and play it just to get that
Mhm.
sort of atmosphere,
Yeah.
because I mean that's just one part of the atmosphere. There's the parts with the clickers which you haven't seen yet
Yeah. Yeah.
is just whoa. It just blows your mind when you. It's basically like playing a movie.
Yeah, but I think with the computer game, obviously you got the background when you're going through the tunnels and the stuff like that. You got the background noise of like the subtleness of like the Fedra tanks coming over, and you've got like the wind blowing. You can hear the rain. It's exactly the same in this.
Putting the headphones on for that is absolutely
Yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah,
It's so immersive.
yeah,
And I don't know if a lot of people do that, but I would highly recommend when you're playing this game for
hmm
certain things like this,
yeah,
headphones on.
definitely. So then we kind of get to that, and then without going in, because what I wanted to do for this first review show, I kind of just wanted to touch on the characters, the character building, and then I think as we go on in the episodes, we'll kind of get more in depth more. And I think we will do spoilers because I think with a show like this, it's hard not to do spoilers. I think we've done pretty well not doing them so far. But I think
Gonna
going
have
forward,
to
I
at some
think
point.
I
Yeah.
think we're going to have to because it's going to end up like we're missing huge chunks of the show out. But we're only doing that to save the viewers
Mhm.
who haven't watched it yet the spoiler. So I think going forward, spoiler warning with the next episodes and the next review show coming up, there are going to be spoilers. So if you don't want to see spoilers, watch it on the rewind because we can't help it.
Definitely not. I mean, I I'll be interested. There are parts of the game that are very gamey, as in that sounds silly to say that. What I mean is that it's just walk by the numbers game where you're sort of
Yeah.
just walking through a forest, you're scavenging and all the rest of it. And I'm going to be curious to see how they try and elaborate a bit more story into
Mhm.
those elements of the game
Yeah. Yeah.
onto the TV show.
Yeah.
So they've done a great job of this
Mhm.
because I mean this what was it 55 minutes give or take
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean that they've done a great job being able to elaborate that opening because that opening's what 20 minutes, 15 minutes in the game. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were able to elaborate a lot more, and you get a bit more of the backstory of what goes
Mhm.
on. And it's yeah, I mean, for me, it's almost as good a start to a TV show as you're going to get if you
Yeah.
to set it up.
Yeah.
There's not too much action. It's got the right level of emotion
Yeah.
throughout it. It's,
Mhm.
I mean, no matter what you know it's coming
Yeah.
throughout this. I mean, even for the future shows, you know it's coming. It will
Yeah.
still hit you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it definitely will. And then I kind of put this slide in here because this was interesting because you hear about the virus, but you're kind of not told about the effects of it. And
No.
obviously it says report signs of cordyceps infection, coughing, slurred speech, muscle spasms, mood change. I literally just had that coughing fit 2 seconds ago, so I do apologise if I just die. And then obviously it says safety begins with you, Fedra, and time to full infection. I thought this was interesting because obviously it says if you get bit on the neck, face, or head, you've got 5 to 15 minutes before you turn. On the torso, arm, shoulder, or hand is 2 to 5 hours. Not too bad. Got 5 hours to say goodbye to your loved ones. And then on the leg or foot, you've got 12 to 24 hours before infection takes control of your body, and you have to report cordyceps to authorities immediately.
Basically, just hack that bad boy off if you get on the leg or foot.
Basically, now this is kind of what I got from here. I was kind of like, unless you get bit in the head, you can kind of save yourself. Is it going to be the fact that it's going to spread? Is that 2 to 5 hours before the infection is fully spread or fully take control? Or have you got 2 to 5 hours before you can cut off
Yeah.
a limb, lose a limb, and go back to? I mean, because what happens? They don't really touch on it, and they probably will in coming episodes. But say you was to get the infection, you cut your arm off. Is it still going to go green or is it going to go red because you've had the infection and now you're clear? Like I kind of they don't even elaborate that on a computer game,
No,
which
they
I
don't.
which I think I would like to know because obviously in The Walking Dead, for instance, there's numerous characters that get bit and they kind of just cut that limb off and they're normal. Whereas in this, if you do it and you cut that limb off as the cordyceps still spread to you, are you
Mm.
still susceptible to catching it again? Is it going to go off? Is it going to show up as green or red when you kind of had to have the thermometer like dug into and stuff like that? I would have liked to know more about that, and I'm hoping that we will find out more about that.
I think also what it does in the TV show, and it does in the game to an extent, it shows sort of the different stages of
Yeah,
what could potentially happen. So, like
yeah,
when they go down into the basement, your guy
mhm,
he's basically fungi
yeah,
against the wall and things
yeah,
like that. So not everybody transforms into a mutant or
yeah,
into a clicker or whatever it is. Some people just actually do just die
yeah,
and become fungus on a
yeah,
wall or whatever it might be. Um, which it looks horrendous to be honest with you. I'm not
yeah,
sure what would be the worst one, be a clicker or
or a
become part of
bloater,
the yeah or
or a
whatever it would be.
bloater. But I mean, I'm looking forward to this. Like, obviously, like these scenes and these close up replicas are shown in the game. So again, it's just attention to detail. Like, I mean, the attention to detail is second to none. So, like, massive hats off to the creative team, the director, and the writer and stuff, because there's ways to do things, and I think these have done it perfectly. Like, there's levels to this game, and they're killing it at the moment. I mean, they're only episode 1 in, but this has been. I mean, it got a Rotten Tomatoes score that is amazing for a first episode of a TV show. It's going to be, I think, the overarching theme of this and the interest in this is going to peak because it's fantastic. Like, it is absolutely amazing. Absolutely loved it. Hey, Fuzzy, welcome, sir. Thank you very much. But I mean, it's just like it's wicked. And as this goes on, I think we're going to get more of it. We're going to get more of a backstory. We're going to get more Easter eggs, and it's going to become more enjoyable. And I, for one, I want to play the game constantly again because I'm trying to fill my fix and fill the void until the next episode's out.
I actually once I finished watching this, I actually sent a WhatsApp to a friend of mine
Mhm.
because he's a massive fan of the game, and I don't know
Yeah,
if he'd watched the show. And I says, "I've just watched the show. I am busting my hump here to get back on and play the game again,
yeah, yeah,
just because of this." And it would be a fourth time starting the game,
yeah,
So it's kind of like because I wouldn't want to start it from where I left off last the third time. I would actually want to go back to the beginning,
yeah.
try and liaise in with the TV show and go through it.
Mhm.
But the thing is, though, the TV show is what you said 9 episodes.
Yeah.
The game is massive. It's a very
Mhm.
long game,
Yeah.
well worth the investment in it. Don't get me wrong;
Mhm.
it's like nothing else. But it does make you want to go back and
Yeah.
play because you want to see who lives, who dies, try and remember everybody and
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah.
Because there's some characters are only in it for maybe a few minutes in the game.
Mhm. Yeah.
Then there's some characters are in it maybe you could foresee for a couple of
Yeah.
episodes at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
So but you don't know. Not everybody dies, which is
Yeah.
you know uh, a Walking Dead thing. so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
but
No,
it's
definitely.
I will be yeah. And I mean, what would you give this out of 10 personally?
I'd say it's a solid 9.5.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think the only thing is that the little time jumps, um, where I mean, especially the one kind of like the one that we kind of touched on, where it just ended and started again. I felt like there was
Yeah,
something missing. I think, but again, that comes down to you can't do everything that you did in the game, because the game is the free flowing motion. You're continuously playing it. And I know the
yeah.
game does end chapters and it goes into like stage 2, stage 3 and stuff like that. But doing that with a TV show, there's got to be an endpoint, and there's got to be kind of subtle stops and let it start again. And I
At what
think,
at what point does the game end and the TV show begin?
yeah,
And you don't want it to end up going down a route of like other not TV shows, I suppose movies that were games that were became movies like Doom. Oh my
hmm
God, where they tried to incorporate how
hmm
that game was at the first person perspective at the end of
yeah,
that game.
yeah,
And it just you're sitting there watching that film going, what the
hmm
am I
yeah,
watching?
yeah,
So I think the way they've done this
hmm
is perfect. They've got the nods to it, but they
yeah,
don't have to incorporate every
yeah,
single element that is
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
game,
yeah.
you know?
And if they was to do that, the intro to this film would have been about 40 minutes long,
Yeah.
because if they was to incorporate everything like that. But I mean, one thing we touched on it earlier, one thing that I think would, if they're to do a number 3, obviously you've got the open world, but if you've played God of War, the transition from the cutscenes to the gaming is flawless, and it was massively known for that, because it kind of went to the from the movie cutscene straight to the game. There was no
Mhm.
stopping, there was no lag and anything like that. This game is one of them games that could really benefit from that.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I think it does in Last of Us 2. I think
Yeah, yeah,
it does a lot more.
yeah,
But like I've said to you before the start of this, I've finished Demon's Souls and I went on to God of War Ragnarok,
yeah.
and I've sitting playing it today, 4K, just sitting watching, looking at it, and when you go into like you say a scene and then it just cuts
Mhm.
into the game, it's flawless, it's seamless. There's
Yeah,
no breaks whatsoever, but it's just that it just makes it so much more engrossing. It's and
yeah.
Last of Us 2 does that. Last of Us 1 doesn't do it as much. It does a
Mhm.
wee bit, but not as much.
Yeah.
But it does a cutscene and then it goes into a game where it doesn't
Mhm.
seamlessly go into it.
Yeah,
Um, I would like that would be my one gripe with Last of Us 1.
yeah.
In all honesty, the game,
Mhm.
but the TV show, I think I agree, 9.5 out of 10. I think it stays true to the game. It elaborates a bit on things that weren't in the game because let's be honest, a game is a game. It's not going to be a full movie, although it
Yeah,
gets as
yeah.
close to one as you're going to get.
Mhm. Yeah,
But yeah, I would agree, 9.5 out of 10. And I think just maybe for one or two of those little scene
yeah,
jumps, it
yeah,
doesn't need it, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But
And I think the character progression of this, the character relationship, the building, the whole story, the aesthetics of the whole setup of like the compound, the Fedra, the Fireflies, they kind of give you enough to pique your interest and be chomping at the bit for episode number 2. And I'm kind of there. I can't wait for it.
would you want them to stick as close to the game as they have so far, or would you want them to maybe deviate a bit? So what I mean is, say for example, there's a certain character dies. Would you prefer to see them alive in the TV show, or would you prefer it stays true to the game?
I think if the gamer of me talking wants to see a direct replication of the computer game, because I'm kind of like, I want to see they've done it really good so far. I want to see if they can continue that for 9 episodes. And I'm like, oh, the gamer in me really wants to see how much this can compare.
Yeah.
But then the TV series lover of me wants them to throw a swerve ball in and do something totally different that relates to the game but isn't a direct relation to it. So, for
It's kind of like
instance,
Game of
yeah,
Thrones. So Game
yes,
of Thrones I'll use as an analogy because I've read some of the books,
yeah,
and the TV show actually differentiates quite a bit
yeah, 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 yeah,
to the books,
mhm,
and you can tell that they've done that. Now I prefer the books actually to the
yeah,
TV show,
yeah,
but it's because if you read, I mean, the books are massive, they're huge,
yeah,
and they go into a lot of detail. But I'm the same as you. I think I want the TV show to have its own entity as well at the same breath,
yeah, yeah,
and have maybe slight subtle changes, but stay true to it, just not happen
yeah,
as verbatim, as exactly the same as what happens in the game.
yeah,
So if a
yeah,
character dies, just have them die, but die maybe not when you're expecting it,
yeah, 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 yeah.
possibly.
I mean, because they did subtle changes like that from the Walking Dead TV show to the comic. For me, the comic is so much better than the TV show, because
Mm,
what Robert Kirkman did with the comic, it was in black and white, and it was so gory for a black and white comic that they came across. In the TV show, characters died off that didn't die in the comic book. Characters lost limbs in the TV show that they didn't in the comic book. And towards the end of it, it just seemed a bit rushed. And as Fuzzy said, no, as Leon said, Walking Dead became a show as, oh, what can we do this week? Oh, okay, we'll focus on another gang running away from zombies, getting safe, and then it ends. This, I don't think, is ever going to be like that. I think there's too much character development that can happen for that to do that. For that to be solely focused on the zombies and the mutants and the bloaters and the clickers, there's far too much based on the main characters and also the sub characters as well for it just to become another zombie flick.
Have they said if game one is going to be just this first season, or is it going to be a split over two seasons, for example? So the game one,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? So
you know what? I'm not actually sure, but that's actually a good question. So if anyone watching the rewind of this or anyone watching live knows if game one is going to be season one of the TV show, game two is going to be season two and stuff, because I think with how big the game is, I don't even think they're even going to scratch the surface in 9 episodes. So I don't know. That's a good question.
Wait and see.
Wait and see. Wait and see. So that is that. So we've 9.5 out of 10. I've got to give 9.5 clicks. 9.5 clicks out of 10. I'm definitely looking forward to Sunday when it's Sunday 3:00 in the morning. I was up watching this, and I can't wait for it. So we're at that part of the show now where it's going to be the favourite Easter egg. So obviously we've touched on it throughout the whole show. There's Easter eggs in this game, and you always see this, whether it's a comic that's gone to a TV show, a computer game that's gone to a movie or a TV show. There's always going to be Easter eggs there, and I've kind of just picked my favourite ones, and you can kind of add to this as the shows go on, Sean. But so the first one is obviously the TV show started with the two professors. That was horribly realistic, Charlie. What was horribly realistic? You could just elaborate on that. That'd be great. Just saying. So we've got the professor started the TV show, and they kind of started on a subtle tone that the world's basically doomed with climate change and everything. The world's doomed if this virus and these spores and this fungus grows. In a computer game, we kind of don't really get any of that, but we just see the TV series. We just see the Texas Herald and its admitted spikes at area hospitals. I can't remember where this happens in the game. Can you kind of confirm where that happens?
I can't. I'm sure it does happen, but
Clicking. There we go.
But it's the game is so big, so immersive that it's hard to remember every single detail.
Yeah.
You know, so no, this one isn't. It's not one that I'm aware of.
I think it's a female's hand, and I think she's at a desk, but I'm not sure where this happens. But I mean, 300% increase due to the mysterious infection. So either way, the computer game and the TV show started around with this shrewd mystery. You didn't know what was happening. But if I'm being honest, I preferred the start of the TV show to the start of the game because I just thought the TV show was so close to the truth that it could actually happen, that I was invested in it. And I really, as you said, I wanted these characters to be around more because they were great. And I was like, if they could be around more, they clearly died, didn't they? Because, or
That was
did they?
40 years ago. That was 60 years ago.
That was 60 years ago. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, they were great characters, but I mean, it all ties back. So then we've got the T-shirt. The T-shirt is exactly the same. Exactly the same T-shirt. It's absolutely
The necklaces and all as well.
the detail. I mean, the detail in it is just like stuff like this is sensational. Like it is. I mean, that's a Halcyon Drops T-shirt. It's the same color pink, and it's the same. It's just stuff like this. Like they must have had to get that T-shirt made. Do you know what I mean? It's the stuff like that. The detail that they've gone to is amazing. The only thing that's different on this is that Sarah is wearing like a long sleeve T-shirt underneath. But
yeah,
you can't win them all.
No. I mean, there's certain things that are going to go missed. It's just the way it is.
That's it. But yeah, this was another one. We've got this. So this is what I was talking about. So at the start of the show, it kind of all starts off. Sarah goes to school, and this guy here, she's sitting there. She's kind of daydreaming. She's writing down in her journal in her workbook. She's listening to the teacher, and then she kind of looks over, and his hand starts twitching really, really quickly. If you watch it again, you can see his hand. So the one with the pencil, the hand on the left hand side, is literally like that. And
Hmm.
it's only subtly done, and he starts tapping and stuff like that. And Sarah kind of looks and thinks, whatever, he's just bored. And then you kind of go. So that's the first imprint we kind of get that something's not right.
Okay.
Then Sarah finishes school after she's been to the watch shop and been forced out of that because the guy's wife is a bit erratic. He's like, get home. It's all kicking off, the radios, everything's going off. Police driving crazy, get home. She goes to her neighbours. And this scene for me was, I was on
This
the
is
edge
the
of my
freakiest thing for me.
mate, I was on the edge of my seat because I was going like, you see her tweaking and like pulling all these faces at the back, and I was like, is she just going to get up out of her seat and go for Sarah? I was waiting for that to happen. I was waiting for her to get up and just go and just go for Sarah, but it didn't happen. So again, I was like, oh, I had to calm myself down again because it was so well done
Hmm.
that I even thought that Sarah was going to turn around and go, what's the actual hell, and run out.
Yeah.
But she didn't. She literally just turned around and the poor woman's just sitting there like nothing's happened, back to where she was, dribbling onto her mat. And then Sarah's kind of like, right, I've got the DVD, off I go. That was freaky, man. Like that
Yeah.
was
That,
scary.
that's the part I was saying at the beginning where it's sort of it's when it's that soft the soft
Yeah.
camera,
Mhm,
and it was, something's not right, and
mhm,
is she going to lunge at her, or what's going to happen? So
yeah.
those sort of things always put me on edge when I'm watching TV shows like this.
But it was really smart because the way that they've softened the focus, you're instantly drawn to the focus of Sarah.
Hmm.
Because you can't help it, because she's in the forefront of the image and you're kind of looking at Sarah. And with your peripheral vision, you're kind of looking and you think, oh, mate, she's tweaking back there. Like, what's happening? Like, she's like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Jigsaw's going to come out. So that was a freak. That was probably the freakiest scene. And I think the one where she kind of goes into her neighbours and looks up and she's got the spores and the tentacles coming out of her mouth. That again, like she's a freaky ass character and then she gets whacked with a wrench. Apologies.
Which again is a nod to the game, because that's
Yeah. Again, it's one of the tools that Joel carries around. So then we've got this. So this is attention to detail at its finest. Right.
mhm.
So on the left-hand side, we've got the TV show. Even I got confused, and we've got the TV show.
Yeah. I'm actually looking at it going, which one's the
Yeah.
TV show? Yeah, I
On
think the left hand side's the TV
yeah.
show. Yeah. Yes.
And on the right-hand side is obviously the computer game. The only difference I can see is that the car on the right-hand side of the computer game is a bit further forward than the car on the left. But I mean,
Yes.
look at that detailing
The
and the way
signs
that
are exactly the same. Where they're going, it's exactly the same. It's
And the way that this was shot, as you mentioned earlier, it was shot like the computer game because in the computer game, you kind of you just see the front of the car, you don't see behind you. And the way that they've shot this is, I mean, we've said it time and time again. The way that they've shot this and the way that they've pulled information and everything from the computer game, this just says it all. I mean, come on, like we've had comparisons before, but this is just the pièce de résistance or whatever the bloody how the
this
French
entire
say it.
scene is a scene by scene of the game.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
the whole, from doing this, going around the corner, family on the side, him telling him saying no, then to see the
yeah,
farmhouse on the other side. Oh, that's farmer, and it's actually the words,
yeah,
the
mhm,
vocabulary, that's using this is exactly the same. That's
yeah.
what's in the game.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I mean, I think even Sarah turns around to her dad and says, "Are we infected? Are we sick?" And he's like, "No, we're not." And again, it's word for word what's in a computer game, and it's just phenomenal. It's just bits like this that kind of make TV shows like this so enjoyable to watch because
And the
you
thing
get
is,
invested.
this is what, 4 minutes, so it doesn't need to be a
Yeah,
whole big thing where it has to
yeah,
be, every
hmm,
single detail.
yeah,
This does go into a lot of detail, but it's
yeah,
not too long,
yeah,
so it holds your interest.
yeah, yeah, and it really, really does. And then last but not well, second to last, we've got this, and again, this is a mirror image. And what I noticed in the computer game, when this happens, when I think Sarah and Joel they fall over. They've kind of been forced to roll down a hill. I think Joel gets shot, or they kind of roll down, and he kind of picks up Sarah, and he's kind of there with his face to the police officer, the federal agent, and this is before they get shot, isn't it? This is
Yeah.
before they get shot, and he's holding up, and the officer's like, "Stop."
And the officers at that point, he's holding it up, and
Radio's
then
through.
it
Yeah,
cuts to him, and he's having to take a call.
yeah,
He's reporting that he's found these people. then he
Yeah.
gets orders.
Yeah.
And at that point, you sort of realize the government sort of already probably knows
Mhm.
about this, and they're basically
Yeah.
just taking out whoever they can.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a computer game, it's really good what they do because you kind of switch from character of Sarah to Joel, and you kind of see the different versions of Sarah being a very vulnerable girl being held by her father, and then you kind of see the father's element of it of being a protective dad that is literally cradling his daughter and will not and will protect her from anything. Then obviously the bullets go off, they kind of roll down the hill, and then we find out that Joel's been shot, Sarah's been fatally wounded, and this was a tugging at the heartstrings moment. But literally, look at them panels; they are literally exactly the same, down to the crease on the t-shirt. Other than the t-shirt, the long sleeve shirt underneath Sarah, everything is the same. It's just mirrored,
The
and it's
facial
so
expressions
smart
as
how they
well.
exactly. It's just even. I mean, even when you look at it, even the marks on the face, it's just amazing.
Would you give the credit though to the makers of the game because they're sort of mirroring? I mean, this shows
Mhm.
how good games actually are now. When you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
see that
yeah,
this is the actual reaction that somebody might have, and
yeah,
it's evidenced. I mean, if you look at the eyes,
yeah.
do you
I
know what I
know.
mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
insane.
It is insane. Yeah, I mean, and then you've got to give it down to the actors as well because
Yeah.
do you think the actors would have played this game? They must have played it to an
I think
element of it.
I don't know if they might have played it. They might have had some. I'd say it probably have, but they
Yeah.
might have actually just had to sit and watch,
Hmm.
something on YouTube. Because walkthroughs, for example, if
Yeah.
you go on YouTube for Last of Us,
Yeah.
there's a million and one walkthroughs on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it could just simply be that.
Yeah, but I mean, this is great, and this is kind of
Mm.
the second to last panel because I wanted to show this one. So this is we kind of see this when Ellie first meets Joel, and as you mentioned, there's a prominent moment in it where the radio's playing and there's a song playing. So obviously you've got B/F, you've got 60, which is nothing in, you've got 70 new stock, and then you've got 80 with an X for it. Did you want to elaborate on this a lot more, Sean?
See, this I can't even remember what it was now because it's something to do with he's waiting on something coming in, and it depends
Hmm.
on what song is played that tells him what it is. So he's
Yeah.
waiting on a specific song coming in. But the theme throughout the games is that Ellie is. I don't know if she obtains the love of music from Joel or if it's
Hmm.
something that she's already got. And I think this is sort of like a soft nod towards because music is a big thing in this game.
Hmm.
In Last of Us 2, you see Ellie's playing the guitar and stuff, and I think Joel plays guitar in one. So
Hmm.
there's a big element of music in this, and this is sort of like a soft nod to how they utilize music in the game
Yeah.
and the TV show
Yeah.
itself.
So I mean, the song that's played in this is very so not very significant because obviously she sits down and says, "Well, 80s, I guess," and she's reading the book and she kind of thinks, "Well, 80s, what does that mean?" And then she kind of Joel wakes up from her sleep and she's like, "Oh my god, you missed a call. It was something like
Mhm,
Wake Me Up Before You Go Go," which is obviously the Wham song, the 80s hit, and he's like, "Oh shit, we missed it." And she's like, "Bingo, got it.
mhm.
80s means trouble." And then at the end, you hear the song playing. It's an 80s track, and you kind of mean,
And I think the other thing as well is it's what they do in the game as well. You open up your book for like notes of what's
hmm
going on in the game and
yeah,
things like that. As well. And that's sort
yeah,
of nod to it as well.
yeah. And I think it's just the stuff like that because I'm kind of like, well, did anyone hear that music playing? Because obviously 80s means there's something going on. B and F stand for Bill and Frank, which are obviously more characters in the game, so I think we're obviously gonna see them,
Yeah.
because they're quite big characters, but we're obviously gonna see them. The show's gonna go on and on and on. It's gonna get better. It's gonna get more involved. It's gonna become more incredible than it has already. So I am very, very much looking forward to sharing the views with you every single week, sharing the views with the viewers that join every single week that are watching the TV show as well. But I mean, I think as first episodes go, it ticked every single box. I was engaged from start to finish, and I wanted to watch more. I was hoping they would have done a double episode, like episode one, episode two, and it would have been a feature long one because I could have quite happily sat there for 3 hours and just watched the whole
Yeah.
thing.
I could as well, but in a way, I'm also kind of glad they didn't because if it's 9 episodes, I like it to be drawn out so I can
Yeah, yeah,
look
yeah,
for
yeah,
something to look forward
yeah.
to.
Yeah.
The only
Yeah.
thing I think is that episode 2 probably might not have as many nods to the game,
Yeah.
because once you get past where they've after this, where they've left the compound, etc. Because that's the thing at the end of this. Don't know if you noticed it. Because I only noticed it because somebody put it on TikTok. Yes, I have a TikTok, right? Although I don't put anything on it, I watch. But whenever you see them walking into the city and you've got the building leaning against the other building,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you look to the left-hand side on top of the building, you will actually see your first ticker or clicker.
Wow, I'm gonna look back on that because I didn't notice that.
I didn't notice it until somebody showed it. Now it's small, but you see it, and you see it sort of like looking up into this. So it's I didn't notice it until then. But
Yeah.
it's but I think that end scene as well is also a nod to the game, because
Mhm.
you obviously you've got the skyscrapers knocking into the other skyscraper, etc. And
But I mean, it's going to be interesting because obviously within the next episodes, we're going to find out. We're surely going to find out about the infected. We've got to find out about the clickers, and we've got to find out about the bloated. They're the 3 stages of what happens when you kind of get the cordyceps and stuff like that. You've got the infected, you've got the clickers, and then you've got the bloaters, which are the big ass bad boys. But I'm sure we will get to that in episode 2 and episode 3. But as far as first episodes go, it's been an absolute banger. Sean, I'm dragging you in every single week now, along with Tom. We're gonna sit down. We're gonna go. I think we're going to go deeper than we have with this, because I want to go into spoilers. I want to get more about the character development, and I kind of want to engage a lot
I
more,
might
because
actually have
it's
to stick
hard
the
not
game
to.
on again.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
the one thing you do remember at this game is the beginning and the end.
yeah,
There's only subtle bits that you'll remember throughout the middle part of the game, because it's so
yeah,
expansive.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
might actually have to go and play the
yeah,
game again, or just read
yeah,
up on it if I want to cheat.
yeah.
But nah, I want to play the game again. So it's
But yeah, I'm glad. Thanks for joining. Thanks for everyone in the chat.
it's
Leon,
fun.
Fuzzy, ABZ. We had Rayam, Margarito, Dan Dixon. We had Connie. We had everyone. Triple G. But thank you very much for joining. It was a different show as every Thursday, but every single week we will be doing this show review. You've got the Killer Comics, got new comics coming out on a Monday as well. So we've got loads for you for 2023. So Sean, thank you very much, sir. I enjoyed spending an hour and a half with you, and I'm going to enjoy playing the game when I get off of this stream, and then I'm going to enjoy watching episode 2 on Sunday night.
Yep, no worries. I look forward to jumping on next Wednesday.
Next week, mate. Nice one. And as Tom always says, stay safe.
You sound like a dolphin.